The world was in chaos. The pandemic had upended everything, turning daily life into a whirlwind of uncertainty. Yet, in the middle of all this turmoil, my team and I were gearing up for the biggest, most challenging project we'd tackled in 5 years. This was supposed to be our defining moment, the breakthrough that could shape our careers and change everything. But then, everything fell apart. Our boss, the person we all depended on, simply vanished. No warning, no explanation. One day he was there, the next day, gone without a trace. The silence from his side was deafening. At first, we told ourselves it was temporary. Maybe he was sick. Maybe something personal had come up. So, we kept going, dividing the work, holding virtual meetings, trying to keep the momentum alive. We did everything we could to keep the ship afloat. But soon it became painfully clear. Without him, some decisions were impossible to make. We were stuck, waiting for approvals, waiting for direction that never came. Days turned into a week, then two. Still nothing. No emails, no calls, no messages. It was as if he'd evaporated into thin air. I can still remember the eerie feeling that settled over the team, a creeping unease that none of us wanted to acknowledge, but all of us felt. We tried to stay positive, tried to tell ourselves he'd come back soon. But the silence gnawed at us. What was happening? Was he okay? Was this really just a temporary absence? Or something more serious? As the days passed, the weight of his disappearance grew heavier. Without our leader, the project felt like a ship lost at sea, directionless, vulnerable, adrift. Every time I logged into a meeting, I felt that void. The absence of guidance, reassurance, a steady hand to steer us through the storm. We scrambled to fill the silence with our own efforts, working harder, longer, pushing through exhaustion. But the truth was undeniable. We were stuck. And the silence, that maddening silence, was screaming questions we couldn't answer, stirring fears we dared not speak aloud. That moment when the person you trust most disappears without a word is a shock you never forget. For me, Sakira, it was just the beginning of a journey none of us expected. A journey filled with doubt, frustration, and the quiet determination to uncover the truth when everything around us seemed to be falling apart. Despite the growing unease and the deafening silence from our boss, something unshakable held our team together. Trust. Deep down, we believed in him. We believed that whatever was keeping him away was serious, maybe even grave, but that he would come back. That hope was like a lifeline, fragile yet powerful, pulling us through days that stretched into nights. Every morning, I found myself automatically checking my inbox, half expecting an update, a message, anything to explain the void he left behind. We sent letters and emails, gentle messages filled with wishes for his recovery and support, never pushing, never prying. We didn't want to burden him with work or force answers from someone who might be struggling more than we could see. It felt wrong to suspect, to doubt. In my mind, I pictured him battling an invisible enemy, maybe worse than any of us could bear. And so, instead of frustration, there was sympathy. Instead of anger, there was concern. He wasn't just a boss anymore, he was a person we genuinely cared about, someone we wanted to protect. This unspoken care became the quiet engine that kept us moving forward. The project itself was massive and complicated. Deadlines loomed over us like dark clouds. Without his guiding hand, the path was unclear and full of obstacles. Yet, despite the uncertainty, no one gave up. We worked harder than ever. Hours stretched late into the night. Weekends blurred into weekdays. I remember those nights when I sat alone at my desk, long after everyone else had logged off, trying to untangle problems I never imagined would fall on my shoulders. But I didn't complain. None of us did. We knew what was at stake. This was more than just a project. It was our reputation, our team's future, and a testament to the trust our missing leader had placed in us. We were all sacrificing something time with family, friends, personal plans, folding our frustration and fear into the work we delivered, day after day. There were moments when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me. My body ached, my mind spun with questions I couldn't answer. Yet, the thought of quitting never crossed my mind. I could see the same fire reflected in my teammates' faces during our rare video calls. We were united by a commitment to each other, to the work, and to the man we still believed was fighting to come back. Sacrifice became our currency. I even skipped meals sometimes, rushing to fix last-minute issues or answer urgent emails. It was as if working harder could somehow bridge the void he left behind. And beneath it all, a stubborn flicker of hope burned quietly, hope that our dedication might reach him, pull him back to us. But as days turned into weeks, that hope began to feel fragile, like glass on the edge of breaking. The silence stretched longer, the burden heavier. Still, no one dared voice their doubts. We masked our fears with professionalism, wore our anxiety like armor, and buried our worries in productivity. For me, Sakura, and for the team, the line between loyalty and sacrifice blurred into one relentless drive to keep the project afloat. We were no longer just employees. We had become guardians of a mission, protectors of a trust that felt more personal than professional. And even as exhaustion crept in, we stayed faithful. Because sometimes, that's what being a team really means. Almost a month had passed since our boss disappeared into silence. The only piece of news we had was a vague corporate announcement. He had contracted COVID. At first, we accepted this without question. The pandemic was ruthless. Many people we knew had suffered or even lost their lives. Holding on to that explanation felt like the kindest truth in a sea of uncertainty. But as days turned into weeks, tiny signals began to surface, almost imperceptible signs that something wasn't quite right. Yet none of us dared admit it out loud. I remember one of our team meetings clearly. It was rare for anyone to voice the uncomfortable thoughts lingering in the back of our minds. But then, a usually calm and steady colleague cautiously said, "What if he's not really sick? What if this is just an excuse to take time off?" His words hit the room like a thunderclap. The reaction was immediate and fierce, not agreement, but outrage. How could anyone even suggest such a thing? Our boss was more than just a manager to us. He was a person who had earned our respect and our care. We had sent him heartfelt messages, gifts, and worried endlessly about his health. The idea that he could be deceiving us felt like betrayal. "I don't believe that for a second," one teammate said firmly. "We all know how hard he works. He wouldn't just vanish like this," another chimed in. "We've all lost someone, or know someone affected by COVID. It's cruel to doubt his illness." The pushback was so strong that our colleague quickly retracted his words and apologized. For days afterward, the atmosphere was tense, especially around him. We kept a polite but cool, distensa, silent reminder that certain topics were off limits. Still, the small signs refused to disappear. There were no calls from our boss, no updates beyond the corporate memo, no explanation why he could notify his own boss, but remained silent to us, the team working side by side with him every day. Whenever his name came up, the silence that followed felt heavy and uncomfortable, like a wound none of us wanted to touch. Meanwhile, the project began to suffer. The momentum we'd fought so hard to build was slipping away. Deadlines loomed closer and closer, and the pressure on us intensified. We worked overtime, burning the candle at both ends, but without clear leadership, we stumbled through bureaucracy, stuck waiting for approvals that should have been routine. Yet, no one dared openly question what was happening. The team clung to hope and respect, unwilling to let suspicion erode the loyalty that had kept us going this far. We buried our doubts deep, focusing on the work and pushing forward no matter what. I found myself caught between two conflicting forces, the nagging voice in my gut telling me something was wrong, and my heart refusing to believe the worst. I wanted to trust my boss, to believe in his integrity, especially after all we'd sacrificed for him and this project. I noticed little inconsistencies, lack of urgency from corporate to provide clear updates, the strange way information was controlled, and how no one seemed to be stepping up fully to cover his role. It was as if everyone was silently waiting for a miracle that might never come. But I kept my head down, doing my part and pushing harder every day. I reminded myself that people cope with crises in different ways, and maybe he was fighting something far worse than we could imagine. the team held on to patience like a lifeline, believing he would come back when he was ready, and that when he did, everything would fall back into place. Until then, we had no choice but to endure. So beneath the surface of our daily grind and dedication, cracks were forming quiet, invisible, and dangerous. But no one wanted to admit they were there. Not yet. 8 weeks into the silence, just when the project was spiraling into chaos and hope was starting to feel like a distant memory, something happened that shook me to my core. Our boss appeared in a virtual meeting. There he was logging in like nothing had changed. The man who vanished without a word, leaving us stranded, was suddenly back. But the image he presented was nothing like what I expected. He looked well. More than that, he looked rested, healthy, almost too healthy. His skin was sun-kissed, glowing with a vibrancy that contradicted the frail figure I had imagined for someone recovering from a brutal respiratory illness, like COVID. His voice was steady, calm, and unruffled, as if weeks of silence hadn't occurred at all. He barely addressed his absence. A quick, dismissive, "That was brutal. Glad to be back," was all we got. No apologies, no explanations, no gratitude for the countless extra hours we poured into the project in his absence. No acknowledgement of the turmoil and uncertainty he had left behind. For a moment, the team was stunned, confused. We had spent weeks worried sick, sending flowers, working overtime, fearing the worst. And now he was here, healthy and unbothered, as if it had all been a bad dream. But deep inside me, a knot tightened. Something didn't add up. Months passed. The project limped along under new leadership, but the shadow of those missing weeks lingered. Then, out of nowhere, my sister sent me a message of promo for a new reality television show debuting on a major streaming platform. "Isn't this guy a friend of yours?" she asked. "I swear I've seen you both in pictures." Curiosity gnawed at me. I watched the trailer, my heart pounding as the camera panned over the contestants. And there he was, my boss front and center, smiling confidently for the camera, healthy and vibrant, competing on national television. It hit me like a lightning bolt. The truth was undeniable. During the weeks he claimed to be incapacitated, he was living it up on a reality television set, far from any hospital bed or quarantine room. Betrayal washed over me in waves. The man we respected and sacrificed for had lied to all of using a deadly disease as a cover to escape work and chase his own desires. I sat in stunned silence, crushed by the weight of deception. All those sleepless nights, the unpaid overtime, the anxiety and carrot had been for nothing. We had been duped. The trust we placed in him was shattered. Yet beneath the anger and hurt, a quiet resolve began to grow. This wasn't just about his lie. It was about standing up for my team, for our work, for the integrity we all deserved. The collapse wasn't just heartbreak, it was the breaking point. The moment when illusions fell away, and the real fight began. After the initial shock wore off, I knew one thing for sure. Confronting my boss directly would be pointless. He showed no remorse, no intention to explain himself. A public confrontation would only escalate things, possibly backfire, making me look petty or vindictive. But I'm not one to give up, and I was determined to expose the truth in a smart, subtle, and undeniable way. I started thinking strategically. What resources did I have? What opportunities could I leverage? Then I remembered an email from corporate encouraging teams to organize virtual social functions to boost morale and keep people connected during remote work. They suggested game nights, trivia contests, and importantly, watch parties. It was the perfect chance. I hatched a plan to organize a virtual watch party to premiere the reality television show starring my boss without him knowing. My goal wasn't to attack him outright, but to let the truth reveal itself naturally, in front of the whole team and, crucially, upper management. Quietly, I spread the word. I told colleagues how excited I was to finally watch the new show, how I'd wanted to check it out for a while. I built anticipation, inviting friends from various departments, and even some senior executives, framing it as a fun, casual event to foster team spirit. To make it feel official and special, I arranged custom t-shirts themed around the show to be mailed to participants. It was a small touch, but it made everyone want to join. Careful not to raise suspicion, I didn't invite my boss. If he found out, he might back out or try to control the narrative. This watch party was my stage, and I wanted the moment to unfold naturally. When the day came, I took a deep breath and started the stream. More than 60 colleagues joined an impressive turnout for an off-hours event. Even some senior leaders appeared, drawn in by the buzz I'd created. As the show began, the camera introduced the contestants. When my boss appeared on screen, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Initial excitement turned to confusion, then shock. The chat exploded with messages. When was this filmed? Is that really him? Wait, he was on television the whole time? Attendance dropped quickly as stunned viewers logged off, overwhelmed by the revelation. But a core group of about 15, including some close to me, stayed silent, the weight of betrayal settling like a heavy fog. When asked if I knew about the show beforehand, I chose my words carefully. Well, I definitely know now, I said, letting the implication hang in the air. The watch party ended swiftly, but the damage was done. The truth was out landing exactly where it mattered, in front of colleagues and corporate leaders alike. No shouting, no accusations. Just a quiet, undeniable exposure of deceit. I had turned the tables without losing my composure or dignity. This was my reckoning, a subtle but powerful moment that would change everything. The virtual watch party was supposed to be just a casual event, a chance for the team to unwind and connect during tough times. But as soon as my boss appeared on the screen, healthy, vibrant, and clearly enjoying his time on national television, the atmosphere shifted completely. I watched the chat explode in real time. Messages poured in. Disbelief, anger, confusion, disappointment. How could he? He lied to all of us. All that sacrifice for what? The emotions were raw and undeniable. For weeks, we had carried the burden alone, working overtime, sacrificing weekends, worrying endlessly about his health only to discover he had been living a lie, hiding behind a fabricated illness to take time off and chase his own interests. The betrayal cut deep. But I stayed calm. I knew this moment wasn't just about exposing his deception, it was about reclaiming the truth and restoring the integrity of our team. As the show played on, I monitored the reactions. I saw trusted colleagues, those who had been quietly questioning, finally voice their outrage. Some felt betrayed personally. Others feared what this meant for the future of the project and the company's reputation. The impact was immediate. Word spread quickly beyond our team. Senior leaders were alerted, and whispers turned into urgent conversations. Our boss's credibility was shattered, his silence during the crisis now seen as deliberate and selfish. In the days that followed, the pressure on the leadership team intensified. Questions flooded HR and corporate communications. How could this happen? Why was he never checked on properly? Why had no one noticed earlier? I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that the truth was out, no more pretending, no more silence, but sorrow for the trust lost, for the team's sacrifices that seemed taken for granted. Yet, this confrontation wasn't the end, it was the turning point. The moment where silence broke and accountability began. I didn't raise my voice or make public accusations. Instead, I let the evidence speak for itself, and it spoke loudly. In that virtual room, watching the stunned faces and reading the shock in the chat, I realized how powerful quiet strength could be. This was no longer just about me or my boss, it was about standing up for everyone who had given their all and demanding respect and honesty. The climax was raw, emotional, and messy, but it was necessary. And as the dust settled, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The fallout was swift. Within days of the watch party, corporate launched a full investigation. The evidence was undeniable, and my boss, the respected leader, was abruptly dismissed. The news spread quietly but firmly through the company corridors. It was a shock, yet somehow, it felt inevitable. In the wake of his departure, the team struggled to regain its footing, but there was a silver lining. My closest colleague and friend, Min, was promoted to fill the leadership vacuum. Min had always been the steady rock behind the scenes, the one who kept us grounded during the chaos. His rise was celebrated quietly but sincerely by those of us who knew the truth about the months we endured. As for me, I found myself cast in a new light. Colleagues began to see me differently, not just as a team member, but as the quiet force who helped unearth the truth without drama or spectacle. I became the office hero, though none of this was something I sought or wanted shouted from the rooftops. No one fully knew the story behind the watch party or the careful planning it took. Some thought it was luck, others a savvy move. But I preferred it that way, subtle, powerful, and effective. The project slowly got back on track. We rebuilt trust, not just in leadership but within ourselves. It was a healing process, one that reminded us all of the strength we had found in each other when the foundation seemed to crumble. Yet, despite the resolution, a question lingered in the air, one that no one dared voice out loud. Who exactly was our former boss? Was this a moment of weakness? A flawed human succumbing to temptation? Or was it a calculated betrayal, a hidden side of a man we thought we knew? The mystery hung like a shadow, a reminder that people are rarely what they appear to be. In the end, the silence around his true nature became part of the story. It was a twist without fanfare, leaving us to wonder, to reflect, and to move forward. And with that, I stepped into the future, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next.